Keto and Steven had been at the right place at the right time. With the help of the two customers, the police managed to arrest all people locally involved in this organization, and they are working on arresting the bigger fish as well in due time. They obviously apologized to Steven for making fun of him. He had uncovered something really big. He even got a medal, so did Keto. The case is still very much open, but one thing is for certain, Keto is a hero. Without knowing it, she helped to put dozens of bad people behind bars and keep the local town a lot safer as a result of it. Steven could not be prouder. Steven had no idea what to do when Keto started to dig into the grave. She was too strong to be stopped by him alone. He wanted to call for help, but before he could press the dial tone, Keto stopped digging and started barking. She had found something. Steven nervously looked over the edge of the hole. His jaw dropped when he saw what Keto had uncovered. Steven knew that he should have called the groundskeeper and respected the privacy of the person buried there by staying away. It wasn't right to snoop on another person's grave. Keto had dug through the snow and around the nameplate at the base of the cross. She was standing over the muddy hole, her ears straight up as she waited for Steven to see her discovery. The dog was obviously excited by her find. Steven walked up beside her. When Steven finally peered down into the hole that Keto had made, he almost stumbled back in surprise. It was the last thing he ever expected to see in a cemetery. As Steven uncovered the grave with the flowers, he saw the same holes in the plate. He knew it would sound ridiculous to anyone else, but something wasn't adding up. Why were there so many fresh flowers in a cemetery that old? But as one might expect, the police were not that easily convinced of Steven's story. It all just sounded completely ridiculous, and they figured it was probably a prank call or something. Steven didn't know how to react at first, but he was determined not to let this go. Only when Steven kept persisting and sent a couple pictures from the hole that Keto had dug was the police willing to send a squad car. But if Steven was fooling, then he would be in deep trouble. While they were waiting for somebody to arrive, Keto finally calmed down a bit and stopped barking. But every time Steven would come close to the dug-up grave, Keto would react. What he then noticed was something that he had not seen yet, because he had only inspected the nameplates. But the ground on the grave looked like it was covered by dirt. There was not a blade of grass to be found. This was certainly really odd. What was going on here? Then the police finally arrived. He had to explain to them what was going on here and what he had found. Two young officers got out of the car laughing a bit and just not being that serious by the looks of things. They thought they were going to meet a confused man with his dog, but their attitude would quickly change when they saw what was happening here. Steven had to keep Keto's leash on a tied grip when the officers inspected the hole that the dog had dug. They were absolutely stumped by what they were seeing. This was something they had never encountered before. Why did someone do this? Why did Keto react this way? Steven also explained his other finds in relation to the flowers on the graves, the holes in the nameplates, and the fact that all these graves seemed to be fresh. It was obvious that the flowers had been to mark the graves. Someone needed to know which to dig up, or maybe that already happened. And judging by the steel box with holes, these were not graves. These were temporary storage. But for what? And for who? The officers made a couple of calls back to the station trying to get permission to dig out the steel box that Keto had uncovered further or to cut through the top. When the first officer finally finished his hole and showed his light in the box, his eyes went very wide, and he was at a complete loss for words. The other officer came rushing back and said that another car was approaching. If these people had something to do with this, they needed to catch them in the act, so they needed to hide quickly. They had no idea who these people were, and if they are dangerous or not. Steven kept Keto silent, and everybody was on high alert. They couldn't quite see who were in the car, so they had to wait. Then the car came to a full stop. The music was shut off and two individuals stepped out, and they stepped out with shovels. The officers could see them looking at a map for a second before walking towards one of the graves. They were obviously in on the whole thing, and now they could catch them in the act. They were still quite relaxed at this point, but that immediately changed when they saw that the nameplate of their grave was uncovered, and they noticed the giant hole at one of the other graves. They started to look around. One of them looked like he was about to faint. The officers saw that they started to panic and knew that they had to act now before these guys made a run for it. They jumped out to the bushes, equipment drawn, and arrested the guys. The guys did not realize at first what was going on. They looked completely lost for words. In the storage box that Keto dug up there ended up being very rare large cat hides. But they had been in there for a while and had not been properly made, so they had started to decay a bit and smell. This is how Keto managed to detect them